Welcome everyone. In today's video, I'll show you how I made this mitre plane. Additionally, this will be given away, so stick around. I'll tell you more about that later in the video. Alright, so I'm starting with some 13 gauge mild steel. That thickness is what looked right to my eye. 1/8 of an inch just looked a little too thick. And so I've begun by cutting a dovetail in the rear there. That's just going to help resist the force of the wedge when I go to set the blade. And for the rest of this construction, it's going to be held together with some silver braze as well as some screws. And the plain body itself is I'm just bending it over in a vise. And off camera, I worked at this to try to get it as square as possible. Just move back and forth between the vise and the anvil. And now I'm just truing up the bottom there with some files. And then that will be ready to attach the sole, which will happen in a later step. And so now I've begun cutting some joinery in the front of the plane, and that's just going to hold the front and the rear of the plane together. Basically, I'm cutting a mortise and tenon joint, or a half lap joint, or you know what I mean. But that'll get peened around here in a little bit, and then those pieces will be permanently attached. So this is what will be the front of the plane. I just started with a piece of angle iron, cleaned it up on the grinder, and now I'm drilling some screws. These will go through the sole of the plane, and this will just help let everything hold together. And then I can take it apart, put it back together while I am fitting everything to make sure that they are fitting just the way they need to. And here I am cutting the other half of that joint that I cut just a little bit earlier. And with the front and the rear of the body fitting well together, it's time to work on the sole, which I started with some pre-ground steel. It just makes my life a lot easier. So I'm going to go ahead and rough in the mouth over on my little mini mill, and then it is over to the vise with a block of wood set to the exact angle that I want. This is 30 degrees in this case. And just true that up with some files. Make sure everything's nice and even all the way across there. And then it's back over to the mill to cut a tongue and groove joint. And I really should have done this with files. It would have been much faster, but I have this nice little slitting saw. I've never had a chance to use it and decided to give it a try for this project. And then back to the files just to true everything up and get it fitting really, really nicely. And so now I'm making the crossbar. This is what's going to help hold the wedge in. And I'm just doing some decorative turning. These aren't into any specific dimension. What I'm doing for the design essentially is I'm taking cues from 16th century mitre planes, which this plane is heavily based on. And with the crossbar done, I can go ahead and peen that into place, as well as peen the front and the rear of the body together. So at this point, everything has been fitted and refitted several times, and I am going to silver braze the soles to the body. And the originals likely would have been brazed in a furnace. I don't have a furnace braze, and they probably would have used like a copper alloy. Silver braze for my purposes should hold just fine. One thing that I did do was I added a few tabs in there that are also secured down with screws. All of that got silver brazed together, so those are all permanent, and that's just going to help resist any kind of force exerted by the wedge. And then, as you saw there, I gave it a soak in some vinegar overnight, and that just helped clear off all the gunk. And I made everything oversized, so now the sole is just getting trimmed down a little bit, just so it's true to the body. And once that's done, it's time to start cutting into this, and so I can give it a little bit more decorative appearance than a kind of a standard box. And so it's over on the bandsaw, and then I'm just going to true that up with some files. And I decided to cut this shape into the plane at this stage because I felt that would be easier than trying to do it before I did all the bends. This way, I knew for a fact that both sides were going to be even to each other. So for this plane, I decided I wanted to make a tapered blade. I've never done that before, and I thought that would be kind of a fun challenge to do. So I just put it over on the mill. I'm just taking off just a little bit of material there just to kind of give that 1 degree taper, and then I'm going to go ahead and clean it up on the belt grinder. I probably could have done all of this on the belt grinder. I was just more comfortable trying to do it over on the mill first. And that's just some hot glue to help hold that blade down so I can sand it easier. All right, so I decided I wanted to add some decorations to the side of this plane. And I'm starting with some brass here, and it was just some scrap, and I decided I was gonna give it a shot at, I guess, somewhat forging on this. I needed to both thin it out and lengthen it. And since it was already scrap, there was no harm in giving it a shot. So I went ahead and annealed it first. That helps to soften it up. And then I will work at the anvil, and I'll just kind of bounce back and forth between the anvil and the torches. And because as I hammer on it, it's going to work harden. And so heating it back up will just help soften it. And then I worked it enough until I could get what I needed out of it, because I needed 2 pieces out of that stock, and I worked it down to a point to where I could get that. And then allowing extra for some waste and to kind of clean everything up. And so now I'm just going to go ahead and super glue this down to a block of aluminum, and I'm going to use that as a handle while I flatten out, or mostly flatten out, this piece. And then I can just break that bond with a torch here in a second. So during this long shot here, I thought I would pop in and tell you how you can obtain this plane if you so desire. This is being given away as one of the door prizes for Hand Tool Haven 2026. All of the information that you might need is down below in the description at any rate. So Hand Tool Haven is a tool show and fundraising effort for Plain Wellness. And Plain Wellness is a 501c3 nonprofit whose mission is to improve mental wellness through woodworking. So they offer a variety of in-person and virtual woodworking courses. I am also a teacher for them. So these courses can be free if you're an adult with a mental health diagnosis or physical disability. This includes veterans with disability ratings. A little more about Hand Tool Haven. It is going to take place May 16th through the 17th, 2026 in Butler, Pennsylvania, which is near Pittsburgh. Playing will be one of the door prizes. To get entered, all you have to do is show up, buy a ticket. It's a lot of fun. I went to 2025, had a great time. 2026 looks like it's going to be even better, and hope to see you there. And so I went ahead and glued that design I had been working on, printed it out and glued it, just super glued it directly to the brass. And I went ahead and glued both, what will be both sides together as well. And so I can work both sides, and then as I'm doing that, then I know they're going to match each other relatively well. And so now it's just basically a lot of bandsaw work to remove a bulk of the waste and then go at it with some files. And then just some heat will help to break that bond the super glue had. Do this in a well ventilated area. So that those brass pieces will be held on with some screws, and I'm just gonna what I'm doing here is drilling and tapping those, and I think these are 440 screws, so they're pretty tiny. They will get, all this is going to get soldered onto the plane body. Same with those screws, and then the heads will just get ground off. And with that set, it's time to do some last minute shaping to that sole. So now I'm going in and I'm adding some detail to those pieces of brass. So that's a Dremel with a burr, just a carbide burr on the end, and basically just kind of drawing in some lines here and there to give everything a little bit more depth. So, and that's a jeweler's hammer, and I'm just going through and peening everything. Again, this is just to kind of give it some more visual interest. I like the look of all those little divots and facets it's going to leave behind. And so now I'm just going through and giving it some stamps, again, just for decorative purposes. I went ahead and stamped in my maker's mark. I stamped in one for plain wellness because I am working with them on this. And then also went through and did one for hand tool haven just to denote why this plane was made. And now I was looking at this and I was thinking, hey, you know, this kind of looks like a swan or like the body of a bird. So I went ahead and made up some heads out of copper and then soldered those on. So now I'm working on the infills, and they're made out of some Cocobolo. It's my last little bit, and I'm actually kind of happy that it's done because I do not like working with Cocobolo. But for the most part, I'm working it over in the mill, and that's just because this stuff is so hard, and they're small pieces. I figured that was kind of the safer bet. I'm going to do a little bit of roughing now on the bandsaw just to get a bulk of that out. This will all get filed down later, but I got it fitting well enough with the mill, and then again just some bandsaw work to remove a bulk of the material. And so now working on the rear infill, this is made out of that same Cocobolo. And I kind of ran into a problem. It had some voids in it, broke apart on me. So I went ahead and remade it out of some walnut and went ahead and redesigned it so it'd be stronger. I ran out of Cocobolo, but this walnut will be fine. And some shameless self-promotion. I do have a replica block plane for sale. This was featured in a few earlier video, and I made two of them, and the one I'm keeping for myself is quickly becoming my favorite hand plane. It just lives on my bench, and I reach for it on just about every project now. But if you'd like your own, I got one for sale. And to test it, it works. Such a great feeling. So now I'm going ahead and I'm going to cold blue the steel, and then I'm going to blacken the brass. I need two different solutions for that. And basically this is just going to, one, I like the look of it, and two, it's going to offer some corrosion resistance. And a little bit later in the process, like right at the end, I went ahead and just kind of buffed the brass with some Scotch-Brite pads to help pull some of the black off and let some of that brass shine through. Now, looking at that rear infill, I didn't really want anyone to see the walnut, and I had some of this imitation ivory, which is some cast polyester, I believe. And so what I'm doing is I'm just milling in the same 30-degree bed angle, and I'm I am leaving it oversized in pretty much all dimensions. And I'm going to go ahead and epoxy that to the top of the walnut infill there. But first things first, I need to install both of those infills. And so I'm going to go ahead and do that now. And the idea here is that once they're installed, then I can level them out to the top of the plane, which I'm doing here. I'm just using that piece of wood to help keep my saw firmly planted and from kind of bending on me. I'm going to go back through with my block plane, true up that sole, or not that sole, true up the top of that infill to the top of the plane body, so those are all nice and even, and then kind of sand it out to remove any kind of nick marks I might have put in the steel and there. Get it all clean, and then I'll go ahead and epoxy in that cap that I made. And this just seemed easier to me. Then I could make sure that cap was fitting just right. Then I just left that sit overnight, and now I'm coming back in with a blunt chisel, and I'm truing up everything to the existing bed there, and then I'll go ahead and cut and file that infill, or excuse me, cut and file that cap, and so it will be perfectly flush with the plane on in kind of like every dimension. And so now I'm applying just a little bit of stain to that rear infill. I just wanted to darken it up so its color value was closer to the Cocobolo. It's not going to look like it, but at least it gets the color closer. And then I added some stain to that cap just so it wouldn't be so white. I wanted it to be aged a little bit. And now I am working on the front infill, and I'm just going to go at it with basically some files and a rasp and get that leveled out. I want it to be even with the steel. And so this was just kind of a slow and tedious process to get it, but in the end I really like how it turned out. And so for the wedge, my last little tiny bit of Cocobolo, and just, I think I have this set up at like a 12-degree angle, something like that. I have a block that I use to help get it all consistent, and then I also put a piece of plywood there in the back. That is just to help keep the Cocobolo from chipping out as I mill across it. I've noticed that can happen on your exit side sometimes. And I'm trying to be real careful with this because there's no more left in my stash. And so once this is used up, that's all that there is, and I don't plan on buying any more because I really don't like working with Cocobolo. I like the look, I just don't like working with it. Usually the next day I feel like I have the flues coming on, because it is a natural sensitizer, And so I'm also using some gloves because I was getting a little bit of seemed like some contact dermatitis from working with it. So yeah, and then there with the chisel, just trying to work out the rest of the wedge. And I do have my index finger planted pretty firmly behind it. I'm using that as a stop. It's just to limit the chisel's ability to go straight through the other side and potentially into my finger. I was keeping my left hand out of the way. It doesn't quite look like it on camera, but there was some distance between that chisel tip and my hand, just in case anything did go wrong. So now I'm just applying some boiled linseed oil to all the wedges and the infills, and then I'm also going to go ahead and apply that to the body. The cold blue does need some oil, according to the packaging, so BLO works just fine for that. And then I'm giving the sole a nice little tune-up, make sure it's all flat all the way through there. And then now it's time to fit it and give it a test for real. So I am absolutely thrilled with the way that this plane has turned out, both in its performance and its looks. I think it is, it left a beautiful surface behind, and the added decorations gave it a bit of whimsy. Overall, I'm ecstatic with it. And so, as I said earlier, this will be one of the door prizes for Hand Tool Haven 2026. All of that information is left down below in the description. I hope I get to see you there. And until next time, thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you on the next one.